And we're back with more on News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this Tuesday edition of the Ron Petrona Show. We have Daniel Boardman on the show today. Daniel is with the National Telegraph. He's a journalist. He's a former comedian, guy who's actually done stand-up, which to me, I mean, just trying it to me is like amazing. I would never trying to be funny. No, maybe being unintentionally funny, I can maybe understand that. But we have to talk about Kanye West. We have to also talk about Elon Musk. Now Ye, who is Kanye now, is now buying Parler. I had actually given up on Parler. I used to be a member. I guess I still am, but I just stopped going on it after Amazon deplatformed Parler. You might remember after the Hunter Biden stuff, Parler started getting hundreds of thousands of new members as people from Twitter jumped over to Parler. And of course, since those tech guys used to stick together, they no longer do. Amazon pulled the rug out from under Parler, deplatformed them. They had to go find some other infrastructure in order to have their site on, and basically lost all that momentum. And Twitter was the beneficiary on that as they regained back some of the people who had left after that horrendous act of bias. But here we are again now. We have Kanye buying Parler, and who better to talk to about that than our friend Daniel Boardman. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yes, Kanye has bought another doomed to fail social media platform.
Oh, don't say that. Isn't it? Okay, let me ask you this. I bet you didn't go on Parler before, right?
I did.
Am
I'm
I,
on
you
Parler.
did? You're on
Yeah.
Parler?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
regularly? Okay.
No, not regularly, like because it's dead. But yeah.
Well, who's to say that Kanye can't revitalize it? I mean, if a guy like Kanye West takes over Parler, surely that's got to mean, hey, let's give it another shot. Let's see what happens. Maybe it's going to improve. What do you think?
Maybe. But the problem is, okay, so Parler is supposed to be an alternative free speech site to Twitter. And like, listen, I agree. The censorship on Twitter goes one way. The term like they nuke, conservative accounts all the time for things that do not violate the community standards. Well, there's blatant craziness from communists or Islamists or whoever else from on Twitter. But there's too many of these popping up. Like there was Gab, there's Trump's Truth Social, there's Parler now, and in order to work, like Twitter didn't start as a left-wing social media platform. It started as a place to just put out your stupid thoughts in funny clips. It started as a place for people to just say random jokes that turned into a cesspool for political arguments, like all things. But the user base on Parler or True Social or whatever, it's a site for right-wing political communication, which is a lot of what happens on Twitter. But Twitter also has, people, talking about sports and people talking about movies and people talking about, cartoons or whatever else it is. Like Twitter is literally for everything. And yes, it has been taken over by left-wing ideologues, which is why the most significant thing was when Elon Musk said, okay, I will buy Twitter, the current platform that is, that everyone uses, and then I will free it. That's always been the more significant thing to me. And the other thing that has to be noted in the Parler deal is, Candace Owens' husband, George Farmer, is the CEO of Parler. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Candace Owens and Ye have recently done this publicity stunt. There seems to be some disinformation about him being debanked from JP Morgan. There is a video of him saying a month ago he's moving his business from JP Morgan to the Bank of America. And when Candace Owens shared these clips of him being debanked, she blanked out the dates of the email from JP Morgan that his bank had been closed. So we also the reply. So this could be JP Morgan confirming with Kanye that his banking accounts have been closed after he moved them out. So there seems to be a lot that needs to be untangled here still. And Kanye's state of mind has been questioned. He's been quite adamant that I am not crazy, although I have bipolar disorder. These are my lucid thoughts about the Jews that I'm going to give you right now. So I don't think Kanye's,
on that point.
Yeah.
Let's listen a little bit to a few of his thoughts.
Mm-hmm. I said it's up. And let me tell you one thing. It's like if a black man is caught with something in the car or something, everybody in the car going to go to jail with him, right? But if a black man can play basketball or rap, only he gets the record deal. So meaning like if one black man does something bad, all the other blacks get caught with him. If one black man does something good, nobody else gets nothing with him. It's a reverse for the Jewish people, right? If a Jewish person could repeatedly on a deal, it's just them. It's just the businessman. It's not the people. It's not nobody else. But if a Jewish person does good, all of their people eat with them. That's one of the flips. I got to tell you something. Where is a black guy that has a Jewish person signed to him? Point it out. Tell me that. Where is a black person that's signed to a Jewish person? All of them.
Okay, so where is the Jewish person signed to a black man? Daniel, how about that? I'm trying to remember if Bob Dylan ever signed with a black guy, but I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, the proportionality of like, okay, well, how many Jewish basketball players make the NBA? Like, not a lot. And I mean, I think he's solely talking in the business of athletics and music, where, many Jews do not exist in the athletic field. There's a few. So, I mean, are there instances of a Jewish person who has a black person as a boss? Yes. Like, there are senior partners at legal firms that are black, and I assume there's some junior associates who are Jewish. But his other point of, when a Jewish person does something bad, like it's a singular thing, like he might be talking solely in Hollywood, but I don't think he's ever seen coverage of like the Israel-Palestine stuff where like, just right now, there's like a terrorist who was shooting at the Jews who happened to be a doctor as well, like being killed, and this being used to like all Zionists and whatever. And like, I don't understand, like when one Jewish person does something good, we all eat with them. Like, no, I have not been invited. Like, I have not seen this. The other principle here is, listen, are there some double standards that black people face in society? Yes. And the problem with that is it's racist and it shouldn't be. Like a lot of defense of Kanye right now is if he were to say these things about white people, no one would bat an eye and he'd be allowed to say them, and he'd probably get a record contract from a white person. And that's true. But the problem is that's racism being spewed against white people, and it's bad. And it's bad when it's spewed against Jewish people, and it's bad when it's spewed against black people. Like there has to be a through line of racism is bad, not, okay, some groups have it better than others in some categories, so let's all act at the lowest common denominator, which is Kanye's point, it seems to be.
But he's going into the realm of the Jewish conspiracy, though. He's talked about the Jewish media. He's talked about being screwed over by Jewish bankers, Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, whatever. So he is feeding into that view that the Jews have taken over all these important institutions, and that the black man has suffered as a result. At least that's what I'm hearing. Has he lost it? I mean, is that what's going on here? And if, in fact, getting back to my original point, he takes over Parler, does that raise some concerns for, say, you or other people, anybody who hates anti-Semitism? I mean, do you really want somebody like that managing a major social media platform? Is that a threat? Is that something that might make you think, hey, we got to be careful here? All right. If we have somebody who hates Jewish people taking over Parler, that's something that we need to be aware of and rail against.
Well, so how concerned am I about Kanye and his anti-Semitic rants? Not that concerned. I mean, I think my favorite part of his deranged anti-Semitic tirade was the fact that his ex-wife, Kim Kardashian, was having sex by the fireplace with Pete Davidson, and he blamed this on a Jewish conspiracy, a Zionist Jewish conspiracy, to be exact. And now let's remember that his ex-wife, Ms. Kardashian, got famous for releasing a sex tape of her own, which I think was produced by her mother. So this is the woman you chose to marry. And I do not think that it was a Zionist conspiracy to institute fireplace sexual relations among the populace. But if this is the level of discourse we're dealing with, like, fine. Like, I don't think Kanye is a threat to anyone. I think he's just saying crazy things. Now, I just want to be able to say, like, listen, Kanye's going on deranged anti-Semitic rants. I just want to live in a society where I can say this is a deranged anti-Semitic rant, and like I never liked the guy. I feel quite vindicated now. Back in my comic days, I remember saying I didn't like Kanye very much as a person, didn't care too much about his songs, and it was implied that was like a heavily racist, anti-black take for me to have. I feel quite vindicated right now, considering the current situation of things. So, is Kanye a threat to anyone? Like, no, he's saying things. There are some very interesting things of, did Candace Owens lie about the being debanked stuff? Like, this is where you get into some actual, like, I don't want to say dangerous, but like very dark and unethical Jewish conspiracy stuff, because it doesn't look like he was debanked by JP Morgan. It looks like he willfully moved his money out a month ago. And if he's playing that about I'm being debanked and the Jews have screwed me over on the banking stuff, well, then this is a major concern that him and Candace Owens need to answer for, which is they're willfully lying to, foment anti-Semitic conspiracies. But like, am I in danger by Kanye West? Like, Kanye is just some like loopy artist saying crazy things. Like I'm more interested about the ones who hold political power in the United States, Ilhan Omar's, Rashida Tlaib's. In Canada, there's a few of them as well. So like that's when they have the pen of the legislature, that's when I get to dangerous, when they're just saying things on the internet. Like, again, this is Louis Farrakhan stuff. Like Louis Farrakhan says this all the time, and he meets with top Democrats all the time. The Democratic Party is happy with type of rhetoric as long as you say Zionists and not Jews. Right? The good thing Kanye did, and what I like about Kanye, and what I like about Kanye's anti-Semitic rants as a Jewish person, I appreciate that he's just saying Jews. He is not gaslighting us. He's not saying, it's the Zionists who are making my wife have sex by the fireplace. He's like, it's the Jews. So thank you. Thank you for no gaslighting.
Before we get to Trump and what he said about the Jewish community, and by the way, I've had people of the Jewish faith say that Trump was right. I mean, Jewish people do need to get their act together and stop voting Democrat. But here's somebody who says, I'm not sure, this is CH saying, I'm not sure why he's being frozen out of a major bank for making a statement. If they're trying to show the statement isn't true, I'm more confused and interested in seeing this interview after that. I guess he's talking about the statements about JP Morgan. Oh, thanks. Haven't seen the interview, found this whole situation confusing. Okay, so he's with you on that count, I suppose. Okay, do you want to any questions?
I mean, I was like this too, because at the outset, you have to take the complex position as a Jewish pundit who believes in free speech and all this and liberties, that anti-Semitic rants are bad. However, you should not freeze someone's bank accounts for anti-Semitic rants. We need the freedom to be bad people. So I don't you don't want to be defending that person. However, if this actually did not happen, as it seems that Kanye closed his accounts at JP Morgan over a month ago, and there is video of this circulating, well, then that's the worst thing, because lying about being debanked is a serious issue. We have this in Canada. We have the convoy stuff. We actually have debanking issues. So false flag, fake debanking stuff, it sort of undermines the movement for, financial freedom, let's say. So that's where I'm really alarmed and I'm angry at, is potentially Kanye and Candace Owens lying about him being debanked, and be saying like, oh, I was debanked by the Jews for what I said about the Jews. Listen, if that was true, we have an issue we need to parse out. But if it's untrue, then that lie is what angers me the most, is if this was, as it looks like, a deliberate falsehood perpetrated by Kanye and Candace Owens to sort of drum up controversy, which Candace Owens does have a documentary coming out this week about Black Lives Matter, and her husband is the CEO of Parler. So there are a lot of questions to be raised here about the marketing angle of all of this. And if there's deliberate lying about a story for marketing purposes, well, I think that's something the Daily Wire has to take up with Candace Owens, because I think that's grounds for terminating Candace Owens, because you can't have someone who's willfully lying and fabricating a news story working at a news agency. You can't have that.
All right, let's talk Trump. Here's Trump. Allegedly, this is NBC trying to divide Trump and Jewish voters. Trump attacks American Jews. He doesn't really do that, but he says that they must get their act together on Israel before it's too late. So he's saying no president has done more for Israel than I have. Former president wrote in his Truth Social platform, evangelicals are far more appreciative of this than the people of the Jewish faith, especially those in the U.S. I guess he's on about the fact that a lot of Jewish people still lean Democrat, and he's saying, look, I help you guys, and how about supporting me? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those instances where, like, you take it in a vacuum, and like everything Trump said in that tweet is 100% true. Okay,
What?
there's
Really?
no better president in history for the safety and security of
Are
the
you
Jewish people
serious?
globally than Donald Trump.
I mean, I agree with you. You're right. Okay, so you're
Yeah,
with him on this. You agree.
listen, this is okay. This is one of those things where we live in like a weird society where it's like everything in the context of everything contained in the tweets is true. Now, there's also the thing that people are mad about. Okay, is it productive to put this on social media and basically saying the Jews should support me more because of all I've done for you? Now, this is sort of classic Trump, okay? This is not anti-Semitic. This is just Trumpism. This is just Trump being Trump. Is I did all these great things. Some people love me, but more people should love me. He's also pointed out that the evangelical community was far more supportive of his good Israel and, let's say, policy in regards to Jews than the Jewish people have been in America, especially. And listen, so this is one of those weird things where it's like, it would be 100% okay. I think it wouldn't be okay if I said this, right? Because I'm not Donald Trump. The thing is, like, the sort of cringy rhetoric where it's the former president saying this, like, to me, this is a breach of decorum, which is every day in Donald Trump's life for the last 10 years. So nothing surprising. So I don't want to accuse him of anti-Semitism here. This is just Trump being Trump. And it is true. No one has done more for, Israel relations globally than Donald Trump. The Democrats are an absolute disaster. Netanyahu just exposed that he was being undermined by Obama.
Why do so many Jewish people still support the Democrat Party, despite the fact that the Democrats are more likely to be anti-Semitic? You just look at their party, right? Look at the Ilhan Omars. You've got Israel haters. You got all that Israel apartheid crowd amongst that faction, that far left faction in the Democrat Party. So why would anybody vote Democrat if you're a Jewish person?
So there's a large attachment into the Jewish intelligentsia community to their role in the civil rights movement and all that. And this sort of fiction, they want to believe that they're still fighting and it's us, it's the blacks, it's the Jews, it's the gays, it's us united against the Nazis, and the Nazis are right wing. And there's sort of that fear element the Democrats been pushing into them is the far right hates you. And a lot of them are very slowly waking up to the realities of the hard left and intersectionality. It's starting to trickle out. But this is a case, I think, of Western Jews being Westerners and people being more interested in rhetoric than results. And it's not cool, right? If you're a university professor, it's not cool to say, you know what, actually, Donald Trump's done a lot of positive things, right? Because then all your colleagues will turn against you. So, I do know there was a bunch of Jewish academics who signed a letter, how could Trump be whatever? But, I've gotten letters from Jewish academics, saying, I wish I could say what you're saying about Trump publicly, but I just can't because I lose my job. So a lot of it is cowardice. It's cowardice.
All right. No, well, you just answered the question. Daniel Boardman joining us in Saga 960, coming to us from, you're in the GTA, right? And still with the National Telegraph.
Yeah.
Cool newspaper. How are you guys doing anyway over there?
No, doing well. We are, I want to thank the Freedom Convoy for really helping giving us that bump.
All right. Well, as long as you bring up the Freedom Convoy, what do you make of the inquiry so far?
I think that the microaggressions instituted against the they-them community in Ottawa, I think we should have had 7,000 emergency acts. I mean, I don't know why nuclear weapons weren't deployed on the protesters after such microaggressions. I mean, no, it's been what we think, right? It's the anti-convoy people have been saying, well, I heard from a friend that they were murdered by 7,000 truckers, and then they started chanting Hitler slogans. And I heard this. Do you have any evidence? No, not really, right? So again, no evidence. The same old debunked narratives are coming back up. There was a flag here, a flag there. For the most part, pretty boring. Nothing really new or shocking that has come out. How will Justin Trudeau skate out of this one? We don't know. I'm interested to see when, we get to the point of this. I'm looking forward to Benjamin Dichter's testimony, Tamara Litch. I think the few times we'll see people who have opposing views testify. That should be interesting to see what they have to say. But right now, it's just a bunch of they-thems from the Ottawa City Council saying, we were under siege. It was the worst thing ever. My second cousin's neighbor says they were murdered. And do we have proof? No, but I really want you to believe it's true. And that's where we are.
All right. So I take it you don't have much sympathy for all those people who said that the shots gave them PTSD.
Phantom honking? No, listen. Okay, was the Freedom Convoy a regular protest? No. Okay, it was not just a average happy-go-lucky Saturday afternoon march. Okay, but it was proportional to what was happening. People had lost their jobs because they were denied their charter rights. The government had thrown out charter rights, individual liberties, and it started to coerce people into, one, revealing their personal medical information, vaccine passports, vaccine mandates, and people's lives are being destroyed. There are people, some of them just crazy conspiracy theorists who just didn't want to get it just because. Fine. There's people who got the first shot, got horribly ill, and didn't want to take the second shot. Their lives were destroyed because of this. People's lives are being destroyed. It had gone on 2 years. The science was absolutely junk and collapsing, but is being used as a political power grab. So the people marched to Ottawa, and they annoyed the political class. Was the Freedom Convoy annoying? Yes. Yes, it was. And that was its point. It didn't go to the neighborhoods and residential areas. It went to the very seat of Canadian power. It went to the Parliament building, downtown Ottawa, where the lawmakers sit, and it honked at them. It said, give us back our rights. The country is run amok. You have thrown out everything we stand for. Give us back our rights, and we honk, right? The honking will continue until the freedom improves, which was one of the lines being said by all the people there. That was the point of it. So were some people in Ottawa annoyed? Yes. Yes, they were, right? It was nowhere near as bad as the Black Lives Matter riots where things were destroyed. I remember when George Floyd died in Montreal, there was a riot in which rioters, to get back at the people who killed George Floyd, a synagogue in Montreal went and tore up a bunch of Torahs and flushed them down the toilet. Now, this never got Emergency Act inquiry. In fact, during the Emergency Act invocation, there were a bunch of eco-terrorists in BC who violently attacked a natural gas project. No one said anything about that. So this protest was absolutely peaceful, but it was annoying by design, and it worked because in January, the science, trademark Dr. Fauci, said that we need to update the vaccine passport to 3 vaccines. That's what the science said in January. That was the science, trademark Fauci. But then in February, mid-February, all of a sudden the science, trademark Dr. Theresa Tam, had changed. And now the vaccine passports actually didn't really affect anything. And Doug Ford started to make libertarian noises for the first time since 2018. So it worked. The Freedom Convoy forced the politicians to expose the fact that they never based scientific decisions on science. It was all based on public opinion polling data. They changed the narrative, and they forced the politicians to give Canadians back their freedom. Was it annoying to some people in Ottawa? Yes, by design. But desperate times, desperate measures. No one was attacked. No one was defecating anyone. There was no violence.
The left never complains about BLM riots
No.
or Antifa riots. Somehow those are expressions of discontentment that are valid. But when the truckers did it, well, that was bad. How will history see the trucker convoy? How do you think? I mean, when it's 100 years, 50 years from now, will people still consider that the COVID was an important event? Historically speaking, have you considered that?
Yeah, I have. So I do think it's just always history's written by the victors. The establishment textbooks will write, and they'll have to mention it because it is the most successful protest in Western history. Again, it changed the science. After 2 years of dire propaganda, the truckers changed the science and proved that the science was never the science. So for people like me, it would always be remembered as the most successful protest and movement in Canadian history. It just worked. But the establishment controls the textbooks and controls the mainstream media. So they would like to bury it or misrepresent it or call it some alt-right march on Ottawa. So I think it's really up in the air on how it will be remembered. It has a lot to do, I think, with the next generation coming up and just how much they trust mainstream media and mainstream academia. And it's sort of on when Gen Z becomes the point where they're millennials, how much institutional trust will they have? And I think that's the question that will determine the fate of the legacy of the Freedom Convoy.
Will this be the end of the legacy media? Do you think?
Inshallah.
Could this be the
Inshallah,
death knell?
brother.
Could it? The what?
I said inshallah. God
What does
willing.
that mean?
It's Arabic for God willing.
Okay, so could this be the end, though? I mean, let's face it. They're the ones who spread all those conspiracy theories about the convoy being funded by Vladimir Putin, that it was an insurgency, an attempt to overthrow the government, that it was populated with arsonists, rapists.
I think this is a major
racists,
blow.
Confederacy supporters. I mean,
I do think the Freedom Convoy is an sort of a flashpoint and one of the major battles in the moment of the war between alternative and mainstream media. I truly believe that. Like, again, the growth of alternative media during the Freedom Convoy was amazing. Someone who saw that, and it was a lot of people like getting their first red pill or whatever, seeing here's what the media is saying. Well, here's what live streamers on the ground are showing. So I think a lot of people were sort of deprogrammed during the Freedom Convoy. You know, some people got more in their stance and hardcore. But in terms of like the most, minds being liberated from the matrix, I do think the Freedom Convoy had a significant role in that.
All right, I got to ask you about Doug Ford, who still defends his position, which is to support the use of the Emergencies Act. I'm a little disappointed, but I can't really be overly surprised anymore with what Doug has done. We've had other premiers come forward and say, well, no, it was the wrong thing to do. It was an overreaction. But here's Doug saying, no, they deserved what they got.
You can think back to February. Do you think that the federal government was justified in using the Emergencies Act to lift the occupation of downtown Ottawa?
Well, we have some of the top officials with the OPP testifying, and yes, I stood shoulder to shoulder with the Prime Minister. These folks were camping out, everything from whirlpools, disrupting downtown, disrupting the lives of the people of Ottawa. We worked collaboratively with the mayor and the Prime Minister over at the borders. They were holding up $1 billion of trade.
That's a lie.
That's a lie. Yeah.
Single day getting across our borders. We were getting phone calls from governors. It's unacceptable. Myself and I know the Prime Minister believe in free speech. And if you want to protest, protest. If you want to come down to
if you want to protest, Daniel, go ahead and protest. But you'll protest how we want you to protest. You can protest quietly and do it for a couple of days, and then you're done. We'll decide, how you protest. What is it with this guy? I mean, honestly.
Queen's Park and do cartwheels. But if you disrupt the lives of the people of Ottawa every single day, disrupt the lives of
Disrupt the lives of everybody in Ottawa? That's a bald-faced lie. People went about their business. I mean, a lot of those small businesses, they closed out of, because of the lockdowns. Yeah. Why was it okay for him to impose lockdowns, destroying the lives of thousands of people?
This is why the Freedom Convoy was justified.
The viability. It's okay for him to do it under the guise of COVID and the pandemic. But somehow, you truckers, you're bad. You deserve to be crushed.
This is a case of the politicians did exactly what Doug Ford is saying. Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, and the other premiers had locked down the people. They had disrupted their lives. They had disrupted the economy. They had essentially blockaded people into their own homes. And in order to lift these blockades and all this, the Freedom Convoy was the people putting the same pressures onto the political class that the political class had put on the people. That's why the tactics of the Freedom Convoy are totally justified, in my opinion. Now, had this been a protest against, the carbon tax, no, I say you can't do that for the carbon tax. But this is our civil liberties had been trampled and thrown away. That's what this was about. This wasn't about something we disagree with. This is the politicians going too far for too long and pushing people to the edge and destroying their lives and destroying the economy. Justin Trudeau, Doug Ford, they blockaded the borders. They had shut down trade. They had screwed us over. They had led to this hyperinflation recession that we're going to see now. So it was the people who took matters back into our own hands and said, you know what? What you're doing is going to kill us. It's going to be done to you until you stop doing it to us. And they were successful. And they got the politicians to get rid of all this COVID nonsense, which would still be here today if not for the truckers.
Yeah, I would say so. The trucker convoy, the protests were effective because it wasn't long after that the mandates were scaled back. Arrive Canada's toast. I mean, you get as much tyranny as you're prepared to tolerate.
Exactly.
And the convoy showed the politicians, including people like Doug Ford, that we're not going to take your crap forever. And they pushed back. And okay, so they used the hammer of the Emergencies Act to stop it, to stop legal protest, to stop peaceful protest. And this idea, well, we appreciate free speech and we're okay with protest, but you're not going to do this if you're going to disrupt the lives. Well, by definition, protests are disruptive. Leftists hold protests all the time. And do other people say, well, they disrupted my lives? No, because we generally accept the fact that they have their right to protest and to have their say. But
And
somehow, when the convoy members did it, somehow it was so disruptive that no, we can't allow those types of protests. We'll tell you how you can protest. We'll tell you how you can speak, but we won't tolerate these types of protests, as if it's up to them to decide how people can protest. Daniel.
These people are so dangerous. The fact that they are using a government bureaucrat, Zexi Lee, to institute a civilian lawsuit against the Freedom Convoy, you are setting the precedent that if there's a protest that I do not agree with, I can then take financial action against the people who organize the protest. Yeah, you might not like the Freedom Convoy if you're the leftist. Yay, Zexi Lee, she's my hero. Okay, what happens when I sue one of the climate activists for emotional damage? What happens if a white person sues Black Lives Matter, or a black person sues a white person for you are opening up Pandora's box, and you are so short-sighted, and these people are so incredibly dangerous and authoritarian that they have to be stopped. And there's no better justification of why the Freedom Convoy is necessary than the people who oppose the Freedom Convoy and their behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel Boardman, thank you so much for coming on the show. Check out his stellar reporting in the pages of the National Telegraph. How do people access that publication?
You could find us on all the social media platforms that carry news. All right, you could go to Facebook or Twitter, or thenationaltelegraph.com. I think it's it's a modern age. You just type the National Telegraph into Google. You'll find us. Nationaltelegraph.com, National Telegraph, Facebook, Twitter, all the other alternative ones. It's where we are.
Daniel Boardman. All right, thank you. Let's take a break. Back with more News Talk Saga 960 and the Mark Petrona Show after this.